Serious redditors who have taken a person's life, whether accidentally or intentionally. What were the circumstances and how has it affected you? A 12-year-old boy rode his bike in front of my car and died. It f***ed me up for a long time. I definitely had PTSD. I did a lot of drugs to compensate. I didn't invest in having a good future because I didn't feel like I deserved one. I still don't, but now I have a family and they deserve a good future, so I make an effort. When my kid got to 12, I thought about it a lot. She's 14 now. I know the accident wasn't my fault, but it still feels like it was. I already had some depression before that happened, and after it's been a regular battle. There are days where just getting out of bed is a major victory. Over time the guilt and depression have lessened and I have tools to deal with them, but it's still something that haunts me. This may or may not make you feel better, but a car hit me while I was riding my bicycle when I was exactly that age. It was a foggy, rainy night and I had ridden through a stop sign without looking. It messed me up pretty bad, breaking my femur and pelvis and lacerating my femoral artery. If I hadn't been within 2 miles of a hospital, I'd have died. The point is, I never blamed that driver. I knew that I was in the wrong and that the last thing he wanted to do that night was hit a kid. He came to see me in the hospital and I told him in no uncertain terms that he wasn't to blame. I think it made him feel better. Just know that you can't blame yourself for something you truly couldn't help. I know that's easier said than done, but keep at it. Don't let that single moment destroy 2 lives. I promise you that's not what that kid would have wanted. A homeless man jumped out from some parked cars and I hit him. It was raining and at night, and the blood mixed with the water made it look like a literal bloodbath. I could smell the mix of booze and blood in the air. I had a hard time the first couple of days. Then thought I was good. Went back to work but had zero motivation, zero energy, zero emotions. I was just a shell of a person. I had a mental breakdown at the office. They had to call my parents. I was almost 30. I began doing extreme things to get emotions back. Sabotaging my job, vandalizing property at night, things like that. Anything to get some feelings back. I knew it wasn't my fault. That the dude was drunk and jumped out in front of the car and I couldn't have really done anything different. But as others have said, if I hadn't been there, this wouldn't have happened. It's a weird process to go through. I should have gone to therapy much sooner. Eventually, after a couple of years, it kind of just went to the back of my head, forgotten. But whenever some other crisis happened in my life, it would be compounded by this. I lost a good job, some friends. Eventually, compounded with other problems I didn't deal with. I lost my wife. I finally decided to get help. And while I know there's a lot of work to still be done, I feel like I'm finally getting somewhere with dealing with this and other issues. Nobody wants to be on the hook for taking someone else's life. But if it does happen, make sure you seek professional help. Don't let one life being taken away cause your own life to be taken too. For context on me, at the time I held a black belt in judo and a purple belt in jujutsu. I'm a big guy, 6'1" and at the time around 24 stone 336 pounds. I was attacked by a group of men on my way home from the pub. It was around 2 o'clock and they'd been following me for a while, shouting abuse etc., and eventually they started speeding up to catch up to me. I'm not much of a runner, so I turned to try and de-escalate things, but the nearest one swung a massive full-body haymaker and I just did what I'd been trained to do. Right-handed SEOI Naj. His neck broke when he hit the pavement. His friends all ran and left him. I walked off but walked back almost immediately. I tried to wake him up, not wanting to believe what had happened. I called the police. I was arrested and I thought my life was over, but somehow the reviewing of CCTV and a witness account of things showed me doing everything in my power to leave the situation, only turning to physically defend myself at the last second. Naturally, I got a lot of praise from a lot of people who saw one scared man defending himself against many, and I got a lot of hate from others who I guess knew him. Claimed I'd murdered their precious boy who wouldn't hurt a fly. Honestly, I sometimes think of who he was before. Was he a happy child? Did he do well at school? Was he loved? What did he do for a living? What were his children's names? What caused him to take the course of action he did that night? I don't regret defending myself and I never will. I just wish it had never come to it. I don't go out alone anymore. It was 10 years ago next month and it still hits hard. My best friend killed his neighbor's 2-year-old daughter. He was driving past her house towards his and she ran into the road after a cat. He never returned. In fact, he just got removal men to empty the house for him and only saw the neighbor at the inquest. He was cleared of blame. The car was in perfect condition. He was sober and only doing 12 miles per hour. He never spoke to the parents. It haunts him to this day because he knew the little girl so well. He just can't bring himself to speak to them. It was 18 years ago and we never, ever bring it up. I have the opposite. I regret trying to save a life. I'm a nurse and I had a patient who was way into her late 80s. Had multiple issues. Had very advanced cancer with Mets. She was very weak and had advanced dementia. Couldn't even tell me her name. Very debilitated and underweight. Well, her family was very conflicted in making her a DNR. Half her family wanted it. The other didn't want any more measures taken. Unfortunately, the daughter with the medical power of attorney was the one wanting everything done. It was late in my shift. I was working a night shift, so daughter was asleep on the couch. I had noticed the patient was declining in status very rapidly. This poor frail 40 kilograms woman should have went peacefully. For a split second I told myself to pretend I didn't notice the decline and let her pass in her sleep. Instead I panicked and began CPR. Daughter woke up and insisted we do everything. I was doing compressions with one hand. Could hear the snaps and crunch of her ribs. Her mouth was foaming blood as we intubated her. Her eyes bloodshot, staring blankly at the ceiling. Her face sheet white and cold. Yet we continued to assault this poor soul because we were legally obligated to do so. She later passed the next day. We had prolonged her suffering by a day. Forced her under the agony of a ventilator. Her death haunts me. I regret not letting her pass with dignity. A man attacked my wife. I killed him. We divorced. I became a drunk. I still am, but I am functional. It happened 30 years ago, but I still don't sleep well. Was raped in prison whilst on remand. I was 19. First apartment. I had been moved in a few days and my roommates had gone out of town for the weekend. I had just bought a shotgun at a pawn shop because the neighborhood was pretty rough. I wake up around 2:30 a.m. to the front door being kicked in. I jumped up, grabbed the gun, and looked down the hall. I see a guy walk into the living room. My room was straight to the back from the door. I yelled to get the hell out because I had a gun. He turned, raised a pistol. I just started shooting as fast as I could pump it. Fired 5 rounds and hit him with 2 or 3 before he got out the door, and took off. Neighbor heard the shots and called 911. Police followed the blood trail into a backyard about a block away. He died on the way to the hospital. Apparently was high as hell on meth when he broke in. It bothered me for a long time. But at the end of the day, in my eyes, it was him or me. Hope to never be in a situation like that again. A car accident. It happened to be a little girl decided to run across the road without looking or stopping for a moment. Even though it was almost 10 years ago, I am still haunted by this event, and only her mother, when everything is in sight, saw it. Probably not the answer you're looking for, but my mom and twin sister died when I was born. My sister was going to struggle. They knew that she might not make it, but my mom started bleeding and they couldn't stop it. My oldest brother said my dad was different before. I know my dad loves me, but there's always this weird feeling between us. I wasn't the one that killed the person, but I was there, and I saw it all. I was riding in my friend's car, and we were on the way to the store. It was hailing, so we were trying to get some cover and wait it out. Unfortunately, our car got hit on the roof and went through our car ceiling. My friend swerved off the road, and we crashed. I was out for a second, but I woke up quickly and saw the massacre. Somebody had pulled me out of the car, and I got a view of everything. Our white car looked like it was an unfinished paint job, with blood covering most of the front. Turned out we hit 3 people who were taking cover in a ditch. A lady and her 2 brothers. Also in the incident, my friend's neck was snapped by the force. And he died too. I only suffered a broken leg and wrist. And am haunted to this day that I had to see that. I always send messages to the family of the victims. And I end up crying when talking to them. That's my story. Was driving to the mall one evening. A car made a left turn crossing my lanes, causing me to T-bone them. Teenage boy in their passenger seat and my girlfriend in my passenger seat both passed away. This was almost 20 years ago. I've since married and I have 2 sons. And mostly, I'm just numb. It's not that I don't care about things, but I don't experience true happiness all that much and just have an ambivalence I never had before that day. I've moved in most ways but my emotional range has never really recovered.